This is Lucy Sullivan interviewing Dr. Barbara Westmoreland on June 8, 2012. Dr. Westmoreland, where and when did you receive your EEG training, and where do you currently work?
I first received training in EEG when I was a medical student at the University of Virginia. During the summer months, I worked kind of like an EEG technician for the summer, and that's where I really learned the basics of EEG. Then I sat in with Dr. Lever Stewart, who was the EEGer at the University of Virginia, in the Department of Neurology, and he was the one who did the teaching sessions.
And where do you currently work?
I'm now retired, but I have been on the staff at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester since 1971.
What drew you to EEG and diagnostics?
Well, again, it was when I was a medical student and I had that opportunity to work in the EEG lab during the summer, and I became very interested in the field. And so then I decided, after I finished my neurology residency, that I would specialize in EEG.
Was this a popular specialty when you were starting your career?
No.
Who were your early mentors?
Well, Phyllis West was the head technician at the EEG lab in the University of Virginia, and then Dr. Lever Stewart was the EEGer, and Dr. Fred Dreyfus was the main one in charge of seeing epilepsy patients. And, of course, we did a lot of EEGs or looked at a lot of EEGs of patients with epilepsy. And then later, Peter Glore and Dr. Donald Class.
What were your earliest career influences?
Science and math.
If you had not become a physician, what would you like to have done?
Well, I didn't have any other thoughts. I did know that's what I wanted to do. If I hadn't gone into EEG, I would have gone into neuroradiology.
Why do you think this field took off when and how it did?
I think part of it was the developments, and I think this was back in the 1950s, when they started doing more recordings. They had better machines to do EEG recordings. They also started doing some depth electrography. And I think the early people that were involved with EEG at that time really were responsible for how the field evolved.
What equipment did you train on, and what were the main limitations of it?
Well, when I was a medical student, we used an 8-channel Grass Model 3 instrument. It was clunky, heavy, needed batteries. The ink writing pens would clog up and be messy. Paper storage took up space. However, on the other hand, the Grass instruments were well built. They were workhorses and meant to last a long time, and fortunately they evolved into equipment with better channels, better electronic equipment, did away with the batteries. So over time they evolved into better recording machines.
What other equipment have you used over the years, and what did you like and dislike about it?
Going to the digital EEG recording machines and reading stations, these were a big improvement. One could reformat the data, one could store data online, use computer processing of data, could do more analysis of the EEG. And the other thing is network and interface with other machines. Like at this time at Mayo, we have machines in the downtown lab, the hospitals, the OR, et cetera, and they're all linked together, and one can look at the recordings done on any of those machines in real time. So I think the big improvements have been going to digital machines, the improved electronic environment. They also are good for teaching purposes.
What memories do you have of your training program?
The excellent technicians that I worked with, I mentioned Phyllis West at the University of Virginia. There were some excellent technicians there. And then when I came to Mayo, I also was very impressed with the quality of the work the technicians did. They were very knowledgeable, committed to doing good recordings, both at University of Virginia and at Mayo. I think the other thing was seeing the variety of EEG findings, participating in special studies, and interacting with experts in the field. As I mentioned already, Dr. Stewart at the University of Virginia, and then Drs. Class and Charbonneau at Mayo.
What are the main ways in which the field has changed over your career?
Well, again, the development of digital recording and computer analysis of various aspects of EEG, monitoring studies have evolved over the years. We're now monitoring not only patients with seizures, but ambulatory monitoring, monitoring in the OR and in the ICU.
How has scientific knowledge changed the field, and what do you think were the major breakthroughs?
Well, recording instruments that can record and analyze a wide range of frequencies now, the ultra-low frequencies and the very fast frequency spectrums. Integrating electrophysiology with neuroimaging studies, recognition of more EEG findings, patterns, and waveforms, and correlating these with specific types of epilepsies and other types of seizure disease entities.
What are the 2 to 3 big issues in EEG that people are working on to solve today?
I would say a seizure prediction, trying to predict seizures, trying to develop better electrophysiologic monitoring studies for a variety of situations, newborn, infants, as I already mentioned, in the OR, the ICU, and seizures. And can the studies, both with regard to seizures and in the ICU as well as in newborns, can they help predict what the outcome may be? Is the patient going to get better? Is the patient going to get worse, deteriorate? I think those are the areas that are evolving and people are working on now.
What are the main areas of professional discussion or disagreement today?
Classification of seizures. This is important because one needs to combine the EEG recordings with the types of seizures, so there is still some disagreement about how seizures should be classified. In addition, other things, guidelines for recording and monitoring studies, particularly of newborn and in the ICU.
What are you most proud of in your professional life?
My role in teaching and education at all levels, medical school, residents, fellows, CME courses, period. Developing a formal education program and educational tools for our residents and fellows and technicians at Mayo. And then seeing how well the residents, fellows, and technicians have done once they have finished their training, some of which have stayed at Mayo, some of which have gone elsewhere.
Where do you see neurodiagnostics in 10 years?
Further development of electrodiagnostic techniques and equipment for seizure detection and prevention, monitoring studies, further integration of electrophysiology with the various imaging studies.
What is the best piece of advice that you have ever received?
If you don't succeed, try again. Also, you learn more from your mistakes than your successes.
Is there anyone else in EEG that you think we should interview, or prominent electroencephalographers we should document and things like that?
Well, if you haven't already, Warren Bloom in London, Ontario, Fred Anderman at the Montreal Neurologic Institute, Peter Kaplan, who's in Baltimore. He is one of, and yes, you've already interviewed him.
Not yet, but he's on the list too, yeah.
Right. He's a recent past president of the American Clinical Neurophysiology Society. So he would be a good one to ask about the current things that are going on in the field. Michael Sperling would be another one. He's in Philadelphia. He's been involved with epilepsy, but he also has been involved with EEG over the years. Then two people from here would be Donald Class and Frank Scharber. Barry Tharp might be another one. He participated in neonatal recordings in the early stages of EEG, so he would be a good one to talk to.
Yeah, I remember reading lots of his articles, so that's great. Well, good. Hey, well, thank you so much for your interview.
Okay, you're more than welcome, and if I can be of any further help, please let me know.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Hope you have a nice weekend and a nice vacation.
Thank you. Will do. You too. Have a good weekend.
Okay.
Goodbye.